What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I really feel I should have a better intro by now. But today we're going to work with our first Lua script. Now this isn't my first time with Lua, but it has been about 4 or 5 years since I even laid eyes on the language from a user standpoint. And then there's Amazon's subset of the language, which takes advantage of their eBus system. So we're going to explore that in this basic form today, and hopefully with more elaborate and advanced tutorials in the future. So you guys know I like to keep it simple, so I'm going to bring to life the written tutorial that's on the site in the tutorial section on the forum. But keep in mind that this year I'm really striving to expand my channel to just overall things about gaming, more tutorials, maybe different engines, trailers about my game, just maybe some spotlight of other developers, whether they be from Amazon or Unreal or Unity, or just some of my subscribers. It kind of just depends. It's just hard putting a lot of focus into tutorials and things of that nature when you're trying to build a game. And my game is hopefully going to be done soon. I've already been greenlit. I was greenlit last year, actually. I just haven't had the time to complete the game, and it's also on a different engine. So I'm pretty good with Unreal, and I'm pretty fast, but doing that and learning all of the new techniques that's coming out now for different versions, and then having to learn Amazon's engine has kind of broken up my focus. So if that pretty much is why my tutorials have been kind of lackluster, but we're gonna try to fix that this year for sure. So just wanted to get that out the way. So let's get right into the tutorial. So first we're going to create our component entity that is going to house a Lua script that we're going to use for this tutorial. Now if you're not familiar with Amazon's new component entity system, which is in preview, check this video in the top right corner. Top right corner. Check out that video. I recorded that previously, yesterday in fact, and that should give you an idea, an overview of the system, and we're going to use that going forward because that's what Amazon wants us to use. And if you're familiar with Unity, it'll be very familiar. It's component based, so everything that's housed inside of a component is what's used for that component. I mean, and then we have like slices and things, which is like their version of prefabs, but we'll get into all that in the future. But it's a very solid system, and it's something that I like to work in, so that's a plus. So there will be a link in the description as well, so give that a look before watching this one. Alright, so let's get started with our component. We can create this a number of ways, but the way I like to do it is just go over to the entity outliner and right click and create component entity. You can also, inside of the map view, right click and create new component entity. So there's a number of ways you can do that, but we're going to go over to the outliner, right click and create entity, and it gives us the entity one. Now if you guys watched my previous video, you know that I like to create my component systems a certain kind of way because I used Unity for about 5 years, almost 5 years, and I'm just hardwired to do it a certain way. Create an empty and then create every object under that empty component or empty object. But since this is a tutorial, so we're going to keep it really simple. So we're going to create one component, and with that we're going to go over to the entity inspector. As you can see, we have that our basic transform, so we can move the position, rotation, and scale of the component. And we're going to go to add component. Now you can do this a number of ways. You can go to add component here, and it gives you a list of all the things that you can add, or you can have a window for the component palette over here, and then you can go to rendering and drag the static mesh over here, which is what we're going to use. So I'm going to do it over here to keep it really simple. Go to add component, go to rendering and static mesh. Alright, now that we have our static mesh added to the component entity, we are going to go under static asset, go over to the right and click on the browse button, and we're going to look for, well, what the tutorial says is for like some kind of a dial. So we're going to go over to the default folder. So let's go over to objects, default, and we have a number of primitive objects or models, the CGF files. So we're going to go to the transform helper. It looks like a revolving arrow, and we're going to open that. Now let's zoom in, and we want to get our transform tool to pull it out of the ground, and we can actually scale this up. Now I'm using the scale tool, but you can also go over to the transform tool and use the scale value. So it's probably in good taste unless it's needed to keep things even. So let's actually make this a 2, 2, 2. All right, now we're going to duplicate this. So let's Control D and give some space, and let's duplicate it. Oh, sorry. Now on this second entity, what we want to do is change the mesh. So let's go back under static mesh, static asset, browse button, and let's change it to a cube. Whoa. Let's actually use the transform tool and move it over. Now for, I guess, size sake, we're going to actually make this bigger. So let's make this 5 maybe. Yeah, 5 is fine. All right, cool. Now let's get started with our Lua script. Now to add the Lua script is very simple. It's the same way as we did the static mesh, which is why the component system is so cool, because everything is just housed in one entity. So we can go to add component over here on the left, and we're gonna go to scripting. Now we have trigger area, Lua script, and simple state. We'll be getting to these other two really soon, but we want to go into Lua script here. So click on that. Once your Lua script is added, you will see base classes, and then you'll see properties, which we're going to get into a little bit later. What we want to do is, next to the browse button, we want to click on the Lua editor. Now if you already have a script already created, then you would click on the browse button and navigate to that script. But since we're going to create ours from scratch, we need to open up the editor. So let's do that. Now that we have our editor open, what we want to look for two things. We want to make sure that the target is pointing to our editor, and our, sorry, let's not that. Let's open this over. Here we go. Now we want to make sure our target is pointing to our editor and make sure our debugging is on. Now when these two things are green, we get our classes breakdown, which is all the things that we can pull from with a Lua scripting, and also our ebuses, which is how we talk to different components and use event-driven scripting. So let's get started. First thing we want to do is go to File, New, and inside of your Lumberyard, it's going to pop up this window. You want to go down to your folder. For me, I didn't create a new folder, I mean a new project for this one. So we're going to go to Samples Project. We're going to go to Scripts. I'm going to make a new folder called Tutorial. Sorry. And we're going to call this Ticking. Now we're calling it ticking because it's going to make use of the ebus for game ticking. So it's going to be counting every frame, also known as the tick bus. So first with Lua, we have to create a local table. So what we're going to do is call local, and then we're going to give it a name. So it could be any name that you want, but for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to just call it ticking. Now I'm going to get an equal sign, and then we're going to create our brackets, And inside of this table, we're going to create another subtable called properties. And make sure that this is spelled correctly, because this is what allows the editor to pick up certain values. So if you're familiar with Unity, how you can call different variables and functions and things of that from the editor, this is what this is implying. So make sure it's spelled correctly so the editor know how to read the script. Oh, look at me not even spelling spelling it right. Alright, so we have properties. We're gonna go equal sign. Oops. And there we are. We're gonna come back to this a little bit later. So let's finish up the script by going to the end of the script, hitting enter, and we want to type in return, which pops up for us, ticking. So that closes out the Lua script. So that is the basic structure you want to have on every script. Next, we want to create two main functions. Now this is on activate and on deactivate. So this is called when the component entity is, I think it's live mid session or mid game, and then of course deactivate is when the component isn't supposed to be used anymore. So this creates a efficient system where all the functions or even the tick bus is only being called when you need it, and when you're done with it, so you're destroying the character. I'm going to say destroy actor, but when you're destroying the entity, it's deactivated because it's no longer in use. So we want to get in the habit of doing proper code to where we're not unnecessarily calling on the tick bus or calling an event when we don't need it. So let's go ahead and create those. So to create a function in Lua, we're going to call out function. Sorry, let me highlight it. Function. Ticking, and however I spelled it. And then we're going to give the, and then we're going to go on activate and close it out, and then we're going to hit end. Now you're going to put your code for on activate between the function and the word end. All right, now let's go ahead and create the other one. So we have function ticking on deactivate. Okay, same thing. Gonna have your logic in between function and end. All right, so let's get started with adding our logic under the on activate function. So what we're going to be accessing is the tick bus. So you can actually find that if you go over to the ebuses inside of the references and drop it down, scroll all the way down to it is alphabetically named. So you'll see tick bus here. So what we're going to do is type tick, tick bus dot connect. This is going to connect us to the tick bus, and we're going to apply some parameters. So we have self, and then we have 0. Now what this is doing is it's telling the Lua script, or C++ rather, to send the tick bus to the Lua script, and then Lua script is going to be listening out for each gameplay tick of that call out. So we have it connected to the tick bus, and self represents this particular Lua script that we're writing in. So it tells this Lua script to listen out for the gameplay tick, and then 0 is think of it as priority. So 0 gets higher priority over everything. If you want certain objects to be called later, then you would use 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So for Lua, we actually have to store this into a variable. That way, the garbage collection doesn't just throw out this call. So what we need to do is let's give this a space, and we're going to type self dot tickbus equals tickbus.connect. So this will store the tickbus connection inside your primary local table variable called tickbus, and that is our variable that we created called tickbus. So now that we are connected to the tick bus, we can actually declare a onTick function, which allows us to do logic every gameplay tick. So let's get started on that. So let's go ahead and add the new function. So we're going to go to function. Oh, sorry, I keep clicking off of that. We're going to go to function. And this is where my simple wording comes from when naming this table. Because if you have an extensive name for your table, then you're gonna have to use that extensive name for all of your functions. So it'll be function, I am king of Zaquanda, and then the name of the function call. And that gets tiring after you start writing big scripts or whatever the case. So let's call ticking on tick. And then on tick has two parameters, which is delta time and time point. Now, I'm not sure about time point, I have to look into that, but I know delta time is the actual gameplay tick, so we can actually use that to count or to subtract from or to count against. So if it goes every gameplay tick and we want to say every 15 seconds or every 15 seconds we want to call this function. So we will create a variable, and well, I'm not gonna get into that. We'll actually do that kind of stuff in a later tutorial. So let's go ahead and let's finish this up. So let's finish this off by doing end, and now we have our onTick function. So we're gonna actually have some logic inside of here that will actually interact with our created static meshes that we created in the beginning. So let's continue. Alright guys, and before I forget, let's actually go on the, wow, I just noticed something. This should actually be here. I'm pretty sure you guys are saying that in the comments, but and for deactivate, it should actually be self.tickbus disconnect. There, and then that should disconnect our component when we're not using it, or when we call like a destroy function, or however it is that we're going to get rid of or stop this function from calling a tick bus. That way we don't have any kind of odd behavior, because we're letting it just call and record the gameplay tick indefinitely, and we definitely don't want that. Alright, so let's move on to our onTick function. Now that we have those two functions set for the most part. So what we want to do before we actually move on to our onTick function is we want to add a variable, and inside of properties we want to add a variable called spin rate, or you can call it whatever you want, but I'm going to follow the tutorial and call it what they want it to be, which is spin rate, and we're going to equal that to 1. It's probably better if I capitalize the R. Now, proper programming conventions is you would lowercase the beginning of the variable and capitalize every subsequent word inside of the variable, but following the tutorial, so we're going with that. Now we're going to get access to the transform bus, which is going to give us access to the static meshes transform, so XYZ, which we can then control rotation, scale, movement, transform. So you get the picture. So let's get started with that. So in our onTick function, we want to type transform. Now I'm a very big fan of autocomplete, just a habit from using Visual Studio for so long. So I would like to see that functionality added in the near future, just because it's such a habit. I mean, just a small pet peeve. But transform bus dot event dot rotate by Z. We want to go self dot entity ID self properties. Ooh, I'm typing this horrible. Spin rate multiplied 0.001. All right, so we're accessing the transform bus, and the event that we want to access is rotate by Z. So we want to rotate on the Z axis. Now we're calling the entity ID that we're calling the script on, so it's talking about that static mesh that we added, okay, which is actually the component ID itself, which is the whole thing. And then we have self.properties, which is the spin rate that we added up here. So we're accessing that property to multiply that 1 by this 0.001 to give it a spin factor every gameplay tick. So every gameplay tick, we're going to spin at a rate of 1 times 0.001. All right, so let's check that out and see what that looks like. You want to actually make sure you save your script, and then we're going to check out and see what it looks like. All right, guys, before we check the results of our scripting, I had to make a quick change on my self.properties.spin rate. I capitalized the S. So when I went to go check, it didn't work, and I had to come back and make sure that my code was right, which is why I guess my crutch is autocomplete. So I mean, maybe it'd be a good thing not to depend on it so much, but I can always find problems. I can always do that. So I've been doing programming long enough to do that. So find that little quirk. So if you guys follow me to the T and did the same exact thing, then correct that. If you didn't, it was like, man, amazing, you're a loser, you should fix that, then good on you. But let's go check our results. So we're back in the editor, and I have the script on this guy here. So make sure, since we didn't add it, make sure you go to the browse button, go to scripts, and wherever you put your script, I put mine in tutorial, ticking Lua, and go to open, click on it and go to open, and make sure that you have it selected here. And if you put Control G, which is to start the game, we will get a spin rate, or a spin in general, which is really cool. Now, if you don't already notice, you can actually use this for things like platformers and 2D games, and even 3D games that rely heavily on pickups, and if it's that kind of style of game. So already that simple script gives you pretty much your pickup logic, and then you just have to add the logic for when you collide with the object, then it will disappear or hide, and we can actually go through that. So we're make sure you keep the script around, because we're going to add to it. Might want to build a platform, who knows. Don't hold me to it though, don't hold me to it. There's one more change I want to show you guys that's in the tutorial that makes sense about another eBus that you want to activate. So let's stop this and let's go check that out. So back in the Lua editor, we want to add another eBus call. So let's drop down from the event call, and we want to do transform bus dot broadcast dot rotate by Z. And then for this one, we're not going to use the entity ID. We just want to call the self.properties .spin rate, and we want to multiply that as well by 0.001. All right, let's save that. Now let's go back and check that inside of the editor. All right, guys, made another mistake because I went into the editor and to check out the code, and it didn't work. Came back to see what was going on, and I had myself messed up again. So it was supposed to be self.properties.spin rate. I had it at SELD, so it was SELD. And I do have my mic like right in front of me, so trying to type on my keyboard is really weird right now. I'm gonna have to try to remedy that for future videos. So it's kind of hard for me to properly sit the way I actually program when I'm not recording tutorials. But let's go ahead and check out the code now. If you guys did catch that, then you're awesome again. And if you didn't catch it, I apologize. It's my fault. But let's go ahead and check that. Make sure you save your script, go into the editor, and on the right you can see that we added the property, and because we did it properly, we have the spin rate. So this allows us to edit the value inside of the editor without having to actually recode everything when we want to try different values in different situations. So now that we added that, we have the code on the transfer helper and not on the square, but we do have a broadcast out. So that broadcast is going to send to different to entities that have a transform component, and it's going to broadcast the same function that we're calling for, the same event that we're calling for the transfer helper. So let's hit Control G, and as you can see, we have both rotating. Now that one should be rotating in place, but we're not going to even deal with that. But you guys can see the power of event-driven scripting. So we're going to extend this in later tutorials where we can have like a height adjustment to where it spins and goes up and down. We're going to add collision to where if we collide with it, another object, it disappears. A lot of things that I want to do is really character based, and we just got support for the FBX importer. So there's no documentation really yet on how to do that. So me and some other people on the Slack are actually just kind of testing and playing around and seeing if we can figure it out ourselves before we actually get information from Lumberyard. But that's the tutorial, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys got something out of it. We will definitely be doing more. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I respond to almost all my comments, if not all of them. If you like the video, please leave a like button on the video. I have a slew of tutorials coming out back to back. And once we get this character thing worked out, we are gonna be on a roll. I'm already gonna be doing tutorials for Maya, and then also a type of blend tutorial that'll help out just to have it on my channel. And then we're gonna have the XBX importer and all that good stuff. So a lot of things are coming. So I hope you guys are going to subscribe and be on a journey with me to grow with this engine. But other than that, I hope you guys have a good day, a good night, depending on where you are in the world, and always remember to keep developing.